A few surprise starters. Michigan's not just hungry. They don't just have a chip on their shoulder. They are starving. And perhaps Ohio State is never beating the soft allegations, regardless of the truth or not of this story. We're going to get into it all on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday. We are back in doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. We want to thank all of our everydayers. I'm going to give a shout out to Rames, who I met last night at the Michigan Greater Detroit Club kickoff dinner. Shout out to you. It was great meeting you and some of the other Scott. I want to give a shout out to Scott. I don't remember your last name. And to just that club. Also want to thank all of you who make us your first listen. A little harder today with it being 3:02 at the time that I'm recording this. It's just been a busy morning as we are in week one. So first off, want to talk a bit about the surprise starters that we didn't get to talk about yesterday because we recorded before the press conference. Then we're going to get into, I think this kind of feeds into a lot of the things that we have kind of talked about that don't really get quantified in the national media. And then that's, the Ernest Hausman telling Sharon Moore, or telling the players, as recounted by Sharon Moore, that they are not just hungry, they are starving. I think it's really cool, honestly. And then we'll get into the Dave Portnoy Ohio State stuff that happened or didn't happen. I don't know, but it's worth talking about for a minute. So let's start off with the two surprises. Two players were named starters by Sharon Moore yesterday, three did. One wasn't a surprise in Bryce Underwood. Number two was Channing Goodwin at wide receiver. And number three is Brady Norton at right guard. So I don't have like some massive thoughts, but it does kind of like when you're sitting there saying like, oh, it's going to be, I understand we're not in that building, but like when all indications are it's going to be Donovan McCulley, Samaj Morgan, Fred Moore, and it's two of the three, but one of them is not someone that we were thinking was going to be that starter. No one had that intel, right? No one had that intel. It's not like there were a bunch of people out there saying, well, watch out for it. Like, it's kind of like we'll get to that in a second before I get too ahead of myself. But the same thing with Brady Norton, who's kind of been a little bit everywhere, playing everywhere on the offensive line. At first you thought he was going to be maybe in the battle at one of the tackle positions, moves inside. They're cross-training him at center. And that one was at least a little bit less, like, because there have been mentions of him throughout. Didn't really notice him in the spring game one way or the other, to be honest. But I think that there is, that one's a little bit less jarring, but we did think it was going to be Nate Afobe or Lawrence Tatar, but his name had been mentioned throughout. Now, kind of going back, starting with the offensive line, going back to what we talked about yesterday, it certainly is a belief that this is a strong run blocking unit. And I will give credit where it's due here. Josh Henschke tells me that his sources say that Brady Norton might be a stronger pass protector. So maybe that figures into it. We'll find out. But it is a little jarring, especially when you are Nate Afobe. They parade you out in front of the media in spring, say like, now's your time. You just got to win it. And he doesn't. That becomes kind of a problem. I'd say the same thing for Fred Moore, but like I was going to equate this to kind of the Dom Judice, Greg Crippen battle last year, or the Evan Link and Andrew Gentry. Like Evan Link wasn't even really spoken of until he got named the starter. I mean, there was a little bit of hype coming out of fall camp last year that, hey, this might happen. Same thing with Dom Judice. And there was another player that was involved that I can't remember, but it didn't exactly work out last year with those two positions. So you feel a little scarred by it to some degree. And you do wonder, are they overthinking it? Now, Channing Goodwin has been called Mr. Reliable, not only by Michigan players. Like E.J. Holland had a tweet from 2023 in which he called him Mr. Reliable. He sung his praises back. As much as E.J. did not like Jaden Davis, he loved Channing Goodwin. I didn't like what I saw from Channing Goodwin in the spring game. If you were going to say he was reliably not coming down with catchable balls quite often, but sometimes it takes a little bit, right? Like that was his first real opportunity to kind of get that going in a game type of atmosphere, because I don't even know that he was targeted last year. I know he was out there quite a few times, but it was usually in plays where the ball wasn't going anywhere near him, which is kind of a problem in a lot of ways when you're just throwing guys out there that aren't really affecting the play one way or another. Kind of a theme that I've heard coming out of last year's offense. Personnel out there that weren't necessarily effective in any kind of given play, kind of tipping their hats at some other things that were going on for defenses and whatever. But you hope that it's one of those situations where both it's like, oh, these guys came out of nowhere, because like there are some of those, right? Like I even though Sharon Moore yesterday, I had asked him, I said, I'm going to ask you the same exact question that I asked you a couple weeks ago. Who's really impressing you? Who really impressed you? And this time it was Cole Sullivan and Trey Pierce. Now, that's not necessarily alarming if you hear like, okay, Trey Pierce is going to be starting. He started in the ReliaQuest Bowl against Alabama. Cole Sullivan would have been a little bit more alarming, because it's like, okay, you've got two guys that you expect to be starting. And that's kind of the issue, I think, here. It's not necessarily that guys are there, these new ones are coming in. It's more of we expected other names. So is it that these guys rose to the occasion, or the other guys failed to do the thing that we thought that they were going to do? Could be a little bit of both. But that's definitely where I have some concerns here and there. But we'll see how that goes. But nonetheless, I mean, they'll have some time on task a little bit with some, it should not be the debacle that the offseason was last year, where, yeah, they played Fresno State and they won by 20, but it wasn't exactly a convincing win. They had a convincing lead over Arkansas State and gave it up. I don't think they're going to find themselves in that situation in weeks 1 and 3. We'll see what happens in week 2. I just think that they're imminently more prepared for this season, and it will give, week 2, maybe it's not necessarily a situation where you want to acclimate so much, but you're going to have to figure that out, I guess. All right. We're going to move on. I want to get to the starving thing, because this feeds into another aspect of this team that I think is worth noting at this point. So we are going to get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, August 26th, that's today, is officially FanDuel Futures Day. It's a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions, to whether you're calling out your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off. This right here is your moment. Listen, if you're not putting the Detroit Lions and Aiden Hutchinson as Super Bowl winner MVP, I don't know what you're doing. I just don't. And you got to pick outside the NFC North for your division dark horse. I'm just telling you. Might be Minnesota with JJ McCarthy. Might be. They were pretty close last year without JJ. So a little afraid of what JJ will do. Anyway, visit the FanDuel app today. Start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day only, today. FanDuel, play your game. All right, again, big shout out to everyone I got to meet and see. Lots of people that I've seen time and time again. I got my start, honestly, in this job through the University of Michigan Alumni Association Greater Detroit Club. You didn't want to hear it yesterday, but many thanks to Rich Hale. She does not seem to be like she's part of the club anymore, but Shelly Kovacs is a gem of a person. I would not be doing what I am doing here if it wasn't for those two people in particular. And Brian Wassman, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. Those were the people who believed in me and put me in the position to get onto people's radars, to get onto Steve Lorenz's radar and Steve Wiltfong and all of them. So thank you to them. And it's always good to see Bud and Kurt O'Keefe and everybody. It's always incredible. All right. So Ernest Hausman supposedly told the team, we aren't just hungry, right? Because asked about like having a chip on your shoulder. Sharon Moore was talking about this story. It's like, do you guys have a chip on your shoulder? It does feel like they do. This is a very much, again, I liken this offseason to 2021 in a lot of ways. It feels very, very similar in not just the things they're saying, but just kind of the atmosphere, the confidence, the we know something you don't know, which makes a lot of these CBS Sports think pieces that always seem to have the Michigan part written by Shayan Jayaraja, who has no faith whatsoever in Michigan. We talked about that a bit yesterday. It really makes it feel like, okay, they feel like they've got something. Now, that's not always true. We've seen that happen before. I just, last year, Kirk Campbell talking about like, we might be more explosive. Yeah, well, they weren't. They were the opposite. They were significantly less explosive. But I feel like there's a lot that really is working in Michigan's favor here. So, interesting in and of itself. But then you hear about Ernest Hausman, fresh off of a couple trips to Uganda, his home country, and says, like, I've seen how fast people eat when they're actually starving. We as a team, we are not hungry, right? Because that's the thing. Whenever a team is like 8-5 and wants to be better, it's like, oh, we're hungry. We're ready for this. We are a hungry team. We want it. Ernest is like, no, we're starving. We need that food. We don't just want it. It isn't just like me, right now, who hasn't eaten today, but has last meal I had was, last night at 7 p.m. and, had a little ice cream when I got back home at like 10. Like I might be hungry right now, but I'm not starving. And this team is. That feeds into that 2021 thing in a lot of ways. That feeds into, like, I asked Sharon Moore about the importance of, and granted, I got kind of a form answer to some degree, the importance of having the offensive players and the offense on the same page, having where everyone like adores the offensive coordinator. That's something. I can tell you that wasn't the case last year. Like having a cohesiveness, having everyone with the same mentality, all on the same page. You have Bryce Underwood, who's going and hanging out not just with the quarterbacks, not just with the wide receivers or the other offensive players. He's hanging out with the linebackers and the defensive tackles, according to Rayshon Benny. There are times where you can look back at certain seasons and say, I understand why that was a success or why that was a failure. And I understand that there's a lot of these things that we aren't generally privy to, right? Like this isn't something that they're going to sit there and tell like, okay, why did 8-5 happen? And you're generally not going to get lack of cohesion. Offensive players weren't getting along with their offensive coordinator. You're generally not going to get those answers. Okay. But, or like racial segregation has been an issue from time to time in that locker room. 2014, 2017. I know that that was an issue, but then you hear like Rayshon Benny say like Damon Payne came, like he's really acclimated. He's come along in large part because we accepted him as a part of the family, and he's not accustomed to that. He didn't have that at Alabama, right? Like he's been at Alabama for a long time, since what, 21? And yeah, Alabama hasn't quite been Alabama in that time. Now it kind of got better and was very good in Caleb DeBoer's first year and Nick Saban's last year, but it was not quite, well, I guess 2022. Do I have that right? Or was it 20? Was it 21? It was 21. Thinking of 21. But like the fact that like, okay, we're close knit. Like that's important. Why is it important, you might ask? Because one of the problems that has happened over the years, we've talked about this on the show quite a few times, is you have selfish players playing for themselves rather than unselfish player playing for the guy who's next to them. Playing for their coaches, playing for their brothers, all of that stuff. And that's what happened in 2021. That was the big change, was that suddenly you had an unselfish culture and one where there was accountability and one where everyone was like from the top down all essentially on the same page. This doesn't mean every little tiny piece. There's always going to be a little bit of discord in any college football program, given the amount of staff members, personnel, players, all of that. There's always going to be something. But you want like everyone essentially marching to the same mission statement, regardless of kind of more nice, smaller internecine problems. Okay. And it sounds like by all accounts that's where this team is. And that can account for a win or two or three. Because when the going gets tough, when you find yourself on the road late against Nebraska, whether it's this year or 2021, they found a way to pull it out. Nebraska fans probably still complain about that. Michigan had a sizable lead, and I'm not doing revisionist history when when I tell you that your first touchdown was scored on the very same illegal motion type of play that got called in that game multiple times. So there was a lot of things that kept that team together. And if the biggest thing is this season, which in my opinion it is can this be a road team? That togetherness helps. Because some of those other teams, 2019, I know, like they were not as together as they needed to be. At all. There was a lack of accountability in many cases. And they weren't very together. And I'd heard, these are stories that you probably will never hear. And I'm not going to share them because they were shared to me in confidence, unfortunately. But just hearing about how like some of the players that were on that team, for instance, the 2019 team, they're on the road at Wisconsin. And after they go down really quickly, there's guys that had already given up, sagging their shoulders, some crying. And some of the future leaders on the team were looking around at that and saying, like, when I'm a leader, when I have a voice that people are going to listen to, we are not going to be that. That's what you have in like Ernest Hausman types. That's what you have even in guys who aren't team captains like Rayshon Benny types. You've got that in Bryce Underwood by accounts of he's earned the right to play outside of the money. Like everyone wants to say like, yeah, it was the money. I saw a clip of Mike Valeni yesterday. He's like, well, when you're paid that much, you're going to, that might be somewhat true in today's college football, but not necessarily in Michigan football. Now, did they have a heck of a lot of other options they were going to throw out there? No, they didn't. But they weren't going to name him the starter until he at least, hey, we need to see this, we need to see this, and we need to see this, and we need to see this. He did all of those, and then eventually it's like, okay. And it's not just Sharon that's saying that, it's others who are saying like Rayshon Benny saying like, yeah, no, he's become a leader on this team in general. Like he's hanging out with everybody. He's become a more vocal guy. They thrust him into that role, hoping that he would rise to the occasion. And thus far, he has met the occasion. So we'll see. But I think that's a incredibly important thing that doesn't get talked about in general. Like you can look and say, why did Penn State or Ohio State, or, why is Penn State a favorite this year? Why was Ohio State a team that was able to do it last year? In part because, if nothing else, the Michigan game for Ohio State was like the Michigan State game was the year before, or 3 years before rather, for Michigan. They kind of needed that down moment to be able to galvanize. And this is a team that feels galvanized right now. All right, we're going to continue on. I want to get to this Dave Portnoy stuff. It's hilarious. We're going to do that here in just a moment. But before we do, and I don't have an easy way of doing this. There we go. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, or maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougette Ready. Rougette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue, kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. Or if you're in high altitude, that'll work for you too. I saw it on Top Gear or the Grand Tour. I don't remember which one when they were in the Andes, FYI. If traditional options haven't worked, Rougette might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. It's amazing because it's completely online. And Rougette connects with a board-certified doctor and ships treatment directly to your door. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. So head to Rougette.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege. Use the promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougette website for full safety information. All right, I don't know what to make of the report from Front Office Sports yesterday that everyone picked up, myself included, on Ohio State theoretically having banned Dave Portnoy from going inside Ohio Stadium for the Ohio State-Texas game. Ross Bjork, the AD over there, came back and said that didn't happen. But here's the thing. And this is what I love about it, because it's kind of like the Connor Stallion situation, top to bottom. Everyone decided that what happened yesterday was true. It doesn't matter what Ohio State does now. It took too long for Ross Bjork to put out some kind of statement. As I have said to many of people about some of the behind the scenes and some of the Connor stuff, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. And it was hilarious seeing people that I otherwise do not agree with, or maybe don't even like, that have nothing to do with Michigan, in the comment section on various articles or various posts on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, just lambasting Ohio State as soft. I don't know exactly if this is true, but I'm pretty sure I was the first one, back in 2021, before the game, that started noticing and saying on this very show, Ohio State's soft. And it kind of has taken off. Like, other people noticed. I'm not saying that this was like a novel concept, but much like, we equated, I did this in article form after the, I think the 2023 game, maybe it was 2022. No, it was 23 because I remember I wrote it in this house of Ohio State going through the 5 stages, and that type of thing proliferated as well. It's hilarious, and it couldn't be more deserved. Now, it's funny because also the Ohio State fans were generally galvanizing and being like, oh, this is great. When I say fans, I also mean some of their media. Like, oh, yep. Tony Gerdeman might have kind of gave the game up by saying, like, there were several people that were high up within the Ohio State program who had voiced to Ross Bjork that they do not want Dave Portnoy in the stadium saying things about Ohio State that are not nice. And then, on top of this report, so for Ross Bjork to come back and say that didn't happen, well, you had someone who's a relatively prominent member of the Ohio State media telling you that there have been people who had voiced their displeasure. So I don't know what to believe. I just know it's funny. That's what it is. And even more so funny was Connor's reaction, where he said to Dave Portnoy, you need tickets. Read the reactions to that, because mostly, there's a couple of Buckeyes in there. And again, I can't see everybody because I've told you before, I block Buckeyes like crazy because it just makes my life more peaceful. I prefer peace over, I'm not in this job to sit and jab people. That's not, even though that's what we're doing right here, right now, it's not why I'm in this job. I like peace, right? Like, if I'm going to talk rivalry stuff, I don't want to hear the other side of it. I don't care what you have to say, but I just want peace. generally, and they've taken it too far in a lot of ways. But some of those responses are unhinged. And it's one of the first times in a long time, because like people asked on, this was a podcast question last week, did you take joy in seeing the fervor following the NCAA ruling? Not really, no. I took a little joy in this. Just because it's like, number one, you're already celebrating, if you're an Ohio State fan, you're celebrating this as a big win for your program. Again, Tony Gerdeman and Land Grant Holy Land, both having the same, I think it was like the same exact tweet basically of, this is a big win for the program being brave. No one else sees it that way, but you fed some chum to a hungry but not starving fan base, and they ate it up. But any pushback here, they're freaking out, thus essentially proving, I know it's not the program itself, if in this case it's the fan base, proving that you are soft. Because if you have a problem with Michigan fans kind of jabbing you on this, or in this case, not even Michigan fans, I saw fans of pretty much any program, saw Boston College fans jabbing him. I saw political people that I didn't even knew what college football is, jabbing them. I saw how just people of all walks, like New Yorkers who don't necessarily have a dog in any fight, jabbing them. It's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. So I don't know what's true or not, but now I've never seen a team coming off of a national championship seem to care less about their national championship than Ohio State. They've spent at least the terminally online. Okay, like let's be fair. It's not everybody. It's the terminally online. Those are the only ones that we see. But they have cared more about the Michigan NCAA stuff all along. And now they're having a meltdown because they're getting made fun of with this, even though they were celebrating it moments before. And now they're just forever known as soft, right? Like to come off a national championship and you've got a bunch of people that are like, oh, okay, this is weak. This is soft. Couldn't happen to a better fan base. Really couldn't. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Tomorrow, I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work yet. If we're going to do a podcast before we go to Ann Arbor or after. If it's after, then we're going to do Jack Tuttle. Chances are we're going to get one in before. And then we're going to do Jack Tuttle and have that air either Thursday or Friday. I'm not 100 on that yet. But and then a mailbag will also be in there. So, yeah, that's the plan. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.